Hello everyone, my name is Acontistes and today I want to bring you something a little bit different, my jump attack rogue build optimized for a nightmare playthrough. The game has been out for a while and I really think some extremely strong builds have already been explored, both in my channel and elsewhere, so I really tried to look for something a little bit out of the box as far as builds go. I think ranged is king in this game for many reasons, mainly safety and target control. So when it gets to melee gameplay, sometimes some heavier hitting builds kinda fall flat, being extremely frustrating to play and very easy to die with if you do want to kill things as soon as possible. This build hits hard in melee, it's combo based, and it's one of the safest builds I've played so far if you execute it properly. Also, honestly, one of the most fun builds I've played so far in the game. Dancing around your enemies while they completely fail to hit you may capture the interest of some of you, who are maybe a little bit more dedicated into making some unique concepts work. In this segment I want to explain as much as I can about the different combos and tools at our disposal and how to extrapolate the best from them. And the first thing about this that we have to understand is that the build lives and dies by downfall. I mean, no secret on this channel that I think downfall is the most underestimated tool in the game. Knockdown is very easy to access and jump attacks hit like a truck. Making them crit on demand is exactly what we want to have for as many of our jump attacks as possible. The first and easiest way to knock down your enemies is using Explosive Trap and Lightning Flask. These are your two core abilities. Both of them knock down your enemies and afterwards you can start spamming jump heavies. The second slightly harder way to knock down your enemies is doing a charge light into a heavy jump. This particular combo will knock down every enemy in the game that isn't a dragon and some very specific bosses. You're probably wondering why jump heavies instead of jump lights. I personally think jump lights are just strictly worse compared to jump heavies for a couple simple reasons. Jump lights have slightly more reach compared to jump heavies, but they deal less damage in a smaller AoE. Aside from that, jump light attacks also have a longer end lag once you hit the ground. The combo that makes the entire build viable, you probably already have understood by now, it's dodge jump heavy. By cancelling the end lag once you hit the ground with another dodge, you can easily loop this combo into itself, and it comes out very fast. Aside from having an extremely high DPS, for some reason this particular combo completely messes up with the AI trying to hit you. You can spam this basically forever, and there's very few attacks that can stop you or even target you, making it immovable and needed, which is incredible for a melee build. With that said, let's head into the actual build and let's talk about the faction choice first. As I said in my previous videos, you really shouldn't stress this decision too much and pick a faction based on lore reasons. It's not really that impactful, but if you really want to optimize the build, I think there's one clear winner, which is the Mornwatch. With Lightning Flask and Bleeding being very accessible for the build, I like to get the extra damage from all the afflictions we're gonna inflict more than anything else. Affliction stacks is also a rare statistic that you kinda never get enough of. Shadow Dragons are also kinda good for momentum generation, but shouldn't really have problems having momentum close to max pretty much at all times. Now for abilities, I'm gonna give you a snapshot of what the build should look like at level 40. As you can see, I have quite a lot of unspent points. I want to give you first an order of priority for the leveling process. I think leveling with this build is very easy, as you can deal an astounding amount of stagger damage in the early game. Using Downfall is of course extremely good, this is just such a good ability. Then you can get Staggering Blade to get some more stagger, Decisive Finale to knock down your enemies before, as you can see, here comes Knockdown, and then you can use Downfall to deal quite a lot of crit damage. And then Decisive Finish to enhance both your Decisive Finale Final Strike and your Downfall critical damage. By doing this, you solve all of your early game lack of damage problems, like very easily. You want to get into Pilfer for some added utility. Just get a good belt. Pilfer procs your belt effect, which is something I only realized after a lot of hours, honestly. But this is really good to just proc your belt and have some survivability added. The real meat of the build is Lightning Flask. It does a lot of things for you. It inflicts shocked, which is good stagger damage. and knocks down quite a lot of enemies in a big AoE. Aside from that, it also gives you a lot of consistent damage without expending a lot of momentum. You can make this ability last quite a long time, and that is exactly what we want, not spending a lot of momentum and having very consistent damage while we go for our big finishers. Since you don't really need to get into Duelist right now, you can make your way towards some motivation, which is a lot of unconditional damage, always lovely. You want to get rolling momentum and explosive trap to basically solve all of your momentum problems with Lightning Flask. You want to grab as many duration upgrade as possible. Salt in the Wound is one of the strongest abilities in the game. Enduring Reach makes your Lightning Flask a little bit more consistent. Eclectic Armor is a good damage buff, so is Close Quarters Combat. Both of these are basically almost unconditional damage, they're just really, really good. And then you want to get even more duration abilities upgrade for your Lightning Flask. The duration increase is really good once you start delving into a Duelist, because it just makes your momentum problems a little bit easier to solve. And then, since bleeding is really accessible, both from yourself and from Lucanis, making Lightning Flask crit on bleeding whenever the enemy isn't burning is just really good. Afterwards, you want to start going into Duelist. Overwhelming Tactics is a very good ability. You're basically always gonna have more than 100 momentum. Bleed, as I was saying, is just really good. And then Adrenaline. Adrenaline, of course, it's weapon damage. Weapon damage is king. 3 stacks of Adrenaline that you can get once you dive into Duelist are 30% added weapon damage, which is a lot of damage. And then Quick Control, reducing defenses. The name of this build is basically reducing defenses. Both your companions and Quick Control reduce the defenses. Defenses are basically nullified with this build, and that is such a strong thing. You want to dive first into the top side of the Duelist tree, because you really want to get Convert Energy for your charged light attacks. This is a lot of damage, honestly. It just improves the damage so much. And then Balanced Flow gives you, again, a lot of weapon damage. Of course, afterwards you want to get into Deflection, Energy Burst, all the passives that make Adrenaline better. But before making Adrenaline better, it's just good to make Adrenaline consistent. One more thing I want to add that I almost forgot about. Never take Evasive Maneuvers with this build. It can mess up your timing big time. If you get a perfect dodge while you're looping your combo of dash, jump heavy, dash, jump heavy, it stops your timing somewhat. It gives you attack that you don't want. It just kinda really bad. You never want this. Equipment is a little bit more locked in place with this build than it is for other builds I've played with. The first thing I want to talk about is Optimus Span. Optimus Span is by far the best weapon you can get with this build. Is what inspired this build to me. Plus 100% weapon damage while attacking in the air is a lot of damage, and since you basically want to spam your jump heavies, this is just gonna be so much damage. You can make do without for most of the game until you get it with Kim with a Twist, which is also really good, especially if you can get a lot of bleeding enemies around you and consistently use Downfall. Consistency is the name, right? Optimus Span is just more consistent damage, which is what this build lacks. This build doesn't lack like burst damage, it has a lot of it. So, King with a Twist doesn't really solve your problems. Optimus Span just makes everything deal more damage. It's just really good. As soon as you get this, you just never want to take it off. Everything else you get on is just agile attack damage. Criting against high health with agile attacks is really good because you can just crit and then afterwards you just inflict knockdown for more crits. It's just good. Then you have also an helmet with more agile attack damage. The other part of this is honestly not really great, but it's just more agile attack damage, it's fine. And then momentum generation, it's obviously really, really good. As for the bow, I just picked a bow that has maximum arrows, and this is just honestly really good if you don't use the bow ever, so just a good choice. For the belt, momentum generation is fine, precision is fine too. But I really like time dilation every time I use Pilfer. Pilfer becomes such a strong utility ability, even more than it already is. I really love this belt. I don't care that it doesn't heal as much, I have Pilfer for healing, so this is just really good. Control ability damage or duration ability damage is kind of the same, it doesn't really matter. Shock damage is what I want from my rings, because 20% damage versus shocked enemies and 20% damage versus bleeding enemies, both situations are, again, almost unconditional. So it's really, really good. But what I think is the most important thing of this entire build is flow. As soon as you use this rune, you gain all 3 stacks of adrenaline at the start of the battle. You do gain adrenaline quicker with it as well, making it so that you only need 3 jump heavies if you have all of your duelist abilities to get adrenaline. But having flow on makes it so much easier. You can start dishing damage from the get-go. It's honestly absurdly good. As soon as you can get this, do get it. I, again, don't remember where I got this, but it's really, really strong. For abilities, you want as less cooldown possible on your tool abilities to just get a lot of momentum, and then you want critical damage on Lightning Flask, since it's basically always gonna crit. Just like my champion build, I think there are 2 companions who are so much better than anyone else, you should never stop using them once you get them. Those 2 are Lucanis and Taash. Before you get them, you can use Valor for a utility and Harding for more stagger damage. Afterwards, Lucanis offers you a lot of bleeding synergy, a lot of Lightning Flask synergy, and just the perfect ability for your game plan. Abominate is a very short cooldown ability, which inflicts a lot of barrier damage, which you kinda have some trouble dealing with, inflicts knockdown, which is good for downfall, and bleeding on demand, which is good for anything else, and defense shred. This is just such a strong ability. You basically want to spam this on cooldown, you always want to use this, and then he has Adrenaline Rush proccing on its own, and just giving you, honestly, quite a lot of good damage. Taash has instead the strongest piece of equipment in the game for a companion. Numbing Herbs makes their burning stacks reduce defenses by 15% per stack. This is absolutely nuts. Taash is the strongest companion in the game. Burning is so easily achievable with them. You just use Fire Breath. You can decide to make the width of the breath bigger to inflict burning on more enemies, or increase their personal damage by shredding fire resistance. Then they have another strong utility tool, which is momentum gain for every second you're invulnerable when they use Fortune's Favor. These 2 companions are bar none the strongest you can use. Defenses are gonna be shred to 0 on most enemies, and they just add so much of their own personal damage to what you already do with very short cooldowns. With everything said and done, I think it's time to leave you to a proper Hall of Valor showcase. As per usual, I wish I could show you some other interesting fights, which are downright trivialized, some of the boss fights of course, by this build, but for spoiler reasons, I'm just gonna show you some arena fights. Enjoy!
Everyone hit the Caribbean, grab a snack. You won't want to miss this next fight. Get clear! Kick the crap out of them. They're big, they're grey, they're
This has been everything I had to offer about the rogue jumpy shenanigans. Leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. It'll have so much more than you think. Let me know in the comments what you want to see next, and feel free to leave any questions. I'd be glad to help answering them. I'll see you next time.